The Buffalo Sabres can't save their season. Can Jack Quinn save his? And can Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's get any worse? We'll tackle it coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including our YouTube channel. Be sure to watch the show there, hit the like and subscribe button, and if you want to get in on our Locked On Sabres text club, you could do that as well by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here in Charlotte. I'm on the road visiting my mom. Went to D.C. this weekend. Was actually in D.C. for Sabres and Capitals. Did not go to the game. Did see some Sabre fans, though, that were checking out the cherry blossoms before the game. A lot to catch you up on from the previous games over the weekend. A lot to get into. Takeaways from those games. A ton of goals between the two games. The Sabres scoring 8 and 4 over the weekend. 12 goals you would think would be enough to get 2 victories. It was not. Part of the reason for that is the Sabres starting goaltender cannot stop a beach ball right now. We'll get to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, the numbers on his season as it continues to deteriorate heading into the offseason, as now we are in the final stretch, the final month of the season, just a couple of weeks to go, couple of home games left, and we'll get to what is coming up later in the week. You get a full week of shows, even though I'm on the road here throughout this week. And of course, tomorrow, a little bit more of a timely fashion, we got a game at 7 o'clock against Ottawa. So a lot of previews coming up and a lot of recaps, a lot of takeaways. Really, I'm looking for takeaways to take into the off season from these games. And these two in Washington and in Philadelphia, I think gave us a lot to chew on. And I want to really hammer on today's episode, more than anything, what we have seen from Jack Quinn as of late. Because Jack Quinn has had a season to forget. It has been one of the most disappointing things that has happened all year, is that guy has been on the ice for 65 games, had all the injury problems last year, had that Achilles injury that he suffered while working out in the summer of 2024 after he was expected by many, including myself, to be the biggest breakout candidate that the Buffalo Sabres had last year. That year pretty much lost to injury, but to recap what happened, in the only 27 games that he played, he was one of the best Sabre forwards. He had their best marks when it came to all his numbers per 60 minutes of ice time. He had 19 points in 27 games. He had a 30-goal pace with 9 goals in 19 games. It all looked good even after he had the Achilles injury in the summer. He has that setback and then even returns late in the year, looked okay. I thought full speed ahead going into this season. It has not been the case at all. He has been lost at sea all year long. A lot of it was that he was playing with Dylan Cousins, another player that had been lost. But I just didn't see anything that could even make me think there's a improvement in his game coming. What was there to build on? He didn't look fast. He didn't look confident in his shot. He didn't look all that responsible in his two-way game. He was kind of having tunnel vision when he had the puck. He didn't have his head up, looking for passes, looking for lanes to open up. He has the one pullback move, and that's about it. There just wasn't really anything to build on. There was no foundation to Jack Quinn's game throughout the entire year. All the numbers backing that up. Sabres get run over when he is on the ice. They are very often hemmed up in their own end. Well, here's the last 4 games now. And we'll talk about the 2 games on the weekend where he really pushed this forward. The idea that he might be having a bit of a resurgence, a comeback late in the year with 6 points in his last 2 games, 3 points against Philly, 3 points against Washington, 3 goals and 3 assists. A lot of that, by the way, coming at 5-on-5. looking at his power play production in this 4-game stretch that I mentioned, that he has 8 points. Only one of those points is on the power play. He did have a power play goal against Philadelphia. Everything else has come at even strength. NT Ryder, you don't follow him on Twitter. He's one of the good Sabres numbers guys, one of the good Sabre analytics guys. And I saw him point this out. I've been driving a lot this weekend, so I listened, by the way, to all of these games on the radio, which callback for many of our fans. Maybe I didn't do that a lot growing up. I would listen to it, sneak the radio underneath my pillow, listening at night. But listen to these games a lot, and then would go back and watch them after, especially the Washington game. A lot easier to do that when you get a win. And I'm watching Quinn, and I'm thinking, all right, these are nice goals. Of course, stripping Jacob Chikrin of the puck at the blue line in Washington. And the game is not out of hand. It's 5-3, and we've seen the Sabres give up 2-goal leads like that all the time, all year long. So that game is not over. Washington is pinning them in their own end. Quinn chasing out to the point, knocks the puck away from Jacob Chikrin. He's off and running the other direction, and he's able to, without really doing any sort of move, just kind of stand there and beat the goaltender straight up and get it top corner without really making any sort of move. He's good in shootout situations. He's good in penalty shot situations, and he kind of proved that again with that goal. That goal was great, and he had a couple of other nice ones along the way, nice shots that he was hammering home. But let's look at the numbers on this, and I liked the way that NT Ryder put this, that his foundation, if you will, is kind of built on quicksand right now. That this looks good. 8 points in 4 games, scoring some goals for a guy that had no production all year long. I mean, 26 points in his first 61 games, followed by 8 points in his next 4 games. Suddenly, 14 goals and 34 points. I mean, if he's able to get up to like 16, 17, and maybe start to approach the 40 point mark, if you could look at Jack Quinn's season at the end of it and see 40 points, I think you might have more people wondering, okay, maybe there is something there. Maybe there is a guy here that can be in our top 6 as soon as next season. The numbers do not really back up that he is playing as well as those numbers show and as your eyes might tell you. I'm going to kind of play both sides here. I believe in the numbers and believe that he's got to play better than this, but there's just been nothing to chew on with this guy all year long, that I'll even take him scoring goals and finishing chances, showing confidence with his shot. I'll take that as a positive and a step in the right direction, knowing that I can look at his last 4 games and see an expected goals for mark of 37% when he is on the ice. That ranks 16th out of 21 forwards for the Sabres in the last 4 games. I can look and see that the Sabres, when Jack Quinn is on the ice, are losing the shot attempts battle 62-38 in these last 4 games. I can look and see that they're being outshot 28-20 when he's on the ice. They are giving up 34 scoring chances while he's out there. They've gained 17. They've given up 17 high danger chances, 6 high danger chances for in that amount of time. And the expected goals in that amount of time when he is out there, 3.1 for the opponent, 1.8 for the Sabres. That is a 37% mark, as I mentioned earlier. And yet, Sabres are outscoring the opponent 6-2. With all of that being said, it is not to say that they are getting totally lucky. It's more to say Quinn is burying his opportunities. He is creating goals, and he's doing it without having that many opportunities while he's out there, in combination with the Sabres are giving up a ton while he is out there in these last 4 games. So, just to throw a little of water on the fire here, this is good. This is a good sign, and especially the fact that he's finishing his chances. That, to me, is the best sign that you have here. Because otherwise, the Sabres have to be a better team when he's on the ice. That is still true. And that will have to be true going into next year as well. So, I'm not saying that you gotta, everything is fake from these last 4 games, but he is definitely getting the benefit of some puck luck, a little bit at least, and he's burying opportunities when the opponent has more while he's out there. So that's how I see what's currently going on with Jack Quinn. Again, though, I've liked how he's looked in the last couple of games when he's had the puck on his stick, and he does seem more confident as the goals are starting to go into the back of the net. And if that's going to give him better play going forward because he is gaining confidence by getting up the numbers and getting the goals to go in, then that can only mean good things. So Quinn, see if he can keep this hot streak going points-wise, 8 in his last 4. Now, the guy that did not have a great weekend and continues to have a disappointing season, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. What a game to lose when you score as many as the Sabres did on Saturday in Philadelphia. What's going on with Luukkonen? And I got a very scary stat to show you on Luukkonen when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness is here and rolling along. We are down into the elites of the elite, final stages of the tournament, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to all those Cinderella stories that you had earlier in the season. Now you take that over to other sports like golf, and as we get spring football even rolling on right now, you got to, and you of course you can bet on those futures on who's cutting down the nets. I'm looking right now at Duke for that. I know it's the favorite, it's not the sexy thing to do, but they look like a machine right now, and I don't see anybody getting in their way. The FanDuel app, if you agree with that and you want to get in on it, the app is super simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. The money's right there in your account the second that the result comes in. So visit FanDuel.com right now. Get in on all the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, at FanDuel.com for FanDuel Sportsbook. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. I am on the road this week, but full week of shows coming your way as we reach the final stages of the Sabres season. And I got takes to get to. We had it on Jack Quinn. I want to get to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen here. The Sabres on Saturday against the Flyers. Tough result. 7-4 final against the team that had just fired their coach, has had one of the worst seasons in the league. I think are worse than the Sabres. I think they are the worst team in the Eastern Conference. The Flyers are. And they just lit it up. They lit up the scoreboard against the Sabres. Matvei Michkov, that guy's going to be a star for a long time. We knew that. He was a highly touted prospect, but 2 more goals against the Sabres on Saturday, his 23rd and 24th of the season. And they were the opening goal to set the tone of the game, the goal to tie it up at 3 right after Jack Quinn had scored to take the lead in the second period. That started a run of 4 goals in a row by the Flyers. Michkov, who was the number 1 star of the game, is going to be a dude for a long time here for Philadelphia. We'll see if he could build around him. If Danny Briere is even going to be the GM, by the way, to build around him. We'll see if he ends up getting fired by that team. You look at that result, and the Flyers deserve to win it. They were the better team. They outshot the Sabres easily, 32-21 in that one. And the Sabres did not get any help from their goaltender. I mean, they scored 4. They had a 3-2 lead halfway through the game. And your goalie ended up giving 7, letting in 7. Luukkonen getting lit up, especially between the 10-minute mark of the second period and the 10-minute mark of the third period. That is a 1-period stretch, 20 minutes of hockey, and he let in 4. And it went from a 3-2 lead to a 6-3 deficit, just like that. I mean, not just like that. It was over the course of 20 minutes. But watching back a lot of those goals, I want him to make some of those saves. Some of them are hard to make and are considered high danger chances that, a lot of times the goaltender, if it goes in, it's all right, fine, whatever. But when you never mix in a save in those situations, it gets tougher and tougher to take, especially when the other guy The 37-year-old dude who's on the doorstep of retirement in James Reimer is making those saves every time you watch him play. Luukkonen, meanwhile, I don't know what has happened other than this was kind of predictable. Regression. I would not have predicted regression like this. I have never been a big Luukkonen guy ever since he struggled in Rochester and kind of got handed the job here in Buffalo because there was nobody else to take it at the time. Well, he proved me wrong last year, and it looked great. And I was willing to buy in on the idea that paying him wasn't ridiculous, and he's the number one goaltender for next year. All right, he's earned that. But I still thought there'd be some regression. I didn't think it would be like this. I thought he had figured some things out. We have talked about on this show him playing a little bit deeper in his own net. There were some technique things that he had seemingly figured out, a little bit more well-polished, professional goalie at this point. He should be able to figure it out. And even if there is regression, what I mean by figure it out is not let it crater his entire campaign. And instead, what he's had is a year that is worse than any other year he's had in the NHL. Even 2 years ago, where the Sabres missed by one, and he had that one good month in January, but otherwise there wasn't much to write home about. That year, his first full season in the NHL, .891 save percentage. This year, .885 save percentage. And now it is debatable statistically that he is one of the worst goaltenders in the entire NHL. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen on the year, looking at evolving hockey for these stats. I've got 80 goaltenders playing at least, it looks like 6 games. 6 games is the minimum that I've got up for this. Out of 80 goaltenders in the NHL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has a better goals saved above expected than Samuel Ersson of the Flyers, who he lost to on Saturday. Better than Philip Grubauer. Better than Ivan Fedotov, also of the Flyers. That tells you how the Flyers season's gone, by the way. They have 2 of the worst 3 goalies in the league. Ville Husso, he's got a higher number than. End of list. That's it. 76th out of 80. For the guy you just signed a brand new contract to, a brand new extension to, brought in almost no competition against him, and handed him the job on a silver platter and said, you're our starting goaltender. And he has answered the bell with, out of 80 goaltenders in the NHL this year that qualify for this stat, he is the 5th worst of all of hockey. That includes all the backups, all the number 3 goalies that have had significant playing time over the course of the year. 10.4 goals below expectation. I mean, that is 4-5 wins right there. 3-4 wins maybe is a little bit more accurate, which might not sound like a lot, but go look at the standings and add 6 points to the Buffalo Sabres standings and tell me what the race looks like right now. I'll show you how they're in the race. Like, really, I know mathematically they're still alive. Add 3 more wins, they're in the race. Luukkonen has really let them down this year. I don't know the answer to that question. I talked earlier about the technique that he had kind of fixed last year. Has he stopped doing that? Has the league figured that out? Is it just that he's missing things? Is it the Sabres in front of him aren't playing better? Well, I think goal save above expected would tell you that's not the case, that they are playing fine in front of him relative, and he's not stopping pucks that he's supposed to be stopping. And in turn, he's worse than Peter Mrazek, Caden Primo, Alex Georgiev, Tristan Jarry, Connor Ingram, all these goalies that have had really bad seasons all year long. So what's to make of that, though? I don't know really what to take away from it because he's under contract. You're not going to do anything with him. I mean, in an ideal scenario, I don't think it's all that realistic. But if it were me, I would be looking to find a team this summer that would be willing to trade for him at a buy low price. He's 26 years old still, young goaltender. He's got the athletic profile you want, and another organization to take a chance on him. While here, the Sabres run with Devin Levi and then the best veteran goalie they could get their hands on. The one thing they really haven't tried during this drought, a sizable investment, whether that's financially or that's in a trade with a draft pick, bringing in a veteran goaltender. You know what you're going to get, and you plug him in with your rookie Devin Levi, and you run with that. I don't think that's all that realistic, though, of course. I think they just paid Luukkonen. They're going to give him at least one more shot at this, and probably to be the starter. I think he's still probably your starter the beginning of next year. For me, though, you are praying praying that Devin Levi is ready to take the job away from Luukkonen next year, or you need Luukkonen to be 10 times better than he was this season. You need at least one of those two things to happen. And right now, I might be more confident that Levi is going to take the job from him at some point next year. That's tough. It might be a year-to-year thing, right? Because you don't know how polished, how ready Levi is to take the job. I thought he could start flirting with it this year, and I was wrong on that. He was not ready for the NHL jump this year. He's still one of the best goalies in the AHL. So next year, I'd like to tell you that that's the time he could take the jump, but you probably will know within a couple of weeks whether that's true, and it's hard to know until he actually does it. But I would take the shot again next year with Levi being one of your two goalies in the NHL and praying that he is ready to be a number one, or at least a solid number two. Sabres need better. They need better out of their goaltender. Luukkonen just got paid, and he is not living up to that contract at all. That's a game right there where it doesn't matter that much at this point in the season because they're going to miss. If they had been in the race and that game mattered, pitchforks would be out for Luukkonen. More than they are. I know there's some. I've looked at our text club over the weekend, and everybody's after Luukkonen. But that's the hardcore of the hardcores. Everybody would be after Luukkonen, I think. If they lost a game like that to a bad team where you scored 4 on the road, by the way, and you lost it anyway, the goalie would be getting blamed even more than he is right now. But the fact the Sabres aren't in the race, he gets off the hook at least a little bit. Luukkonen, he's by the way, Puckpedia, he has got 1, 2, 3, 4 more years at $4.75 million. That's the contract that you're looking at for him. When we come back, where the Sabres are in the standings, the bottom of the draft order, and just to look at it like the playoff race, they're not going to make it. I'll even tell you the odds of it. That coming up here when we return here on the Lockdown Sabres podcast. All right. Locked On Sabres, Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Buffalo businesses want to tell you it is time to register for the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge. This year's event is going to be Thursday, June 12th, and features a 3.5-mile course through Delaware Park, which of course is beautiful that time of year, followed by celebration with a DJ. There'll be lawn games, a tenant experience for you and your teammates. Walkers, joggers, and runners are all welcome. Whether you run for the love of it, for your company, or to build lasting bonds, this is your moment. Teams of 4 participants or more can register today. Registration closes on Tuesday, May 13th. 1 part run, 1 part party. The Corporate Challenge has earned this reputation as Buffalo's corporate social event of the year. Join us for great competition, teamwork, company pride, and a true sense of accomplishment. Go to jpmorganchase.com, jpmorganchasecc.com. Choose Buffalo as your location and start your registration today. See you on the course. Again, jpmorganchasecc.com. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with a little look at the standings and where the Sabres currently sit in the both race for the bottom and the race for the postseason, which is not a real race. But let's look at kind of, especially that exercise that I just mentioned with Luukkonen. Like, man, if you just plugged in a couple more wins, we'd be really having some interesting games, at least down the stretch here. The Buffalo Sabres are 9 points back with 9 games to go. Montreal currently in that last wildcard spot, second wildcard team. And the Sabres have everybody still to climb over. They still have not exited last place in their division. Philadelphia is with a couple of wins back-to-back, hanging around at 69 points. The Sabres are at 68. By the way, there is an outcome where Boston, who the Sabres have the exact same points percentage as, falls down and finishes last in the East. The bottom 3 teams right now, Boston, 69 points, Philly, 69 points, the Sabres, 68 points. And the Sabres have played 2 fewer games than Philly and 1 fewer game than Boston. The Bruins have a real chance of being dead last in the East by the end of the season. As for the bottom of the league, the Sabres have jumped up to 28th. They have passed Seattle in the standings. They have not yet passed, as I mentioned, Philly, Boston, and Pittsburgh. Sabres really, though, could do some damage to their lottery odds. Again, I mention this every time just to make sure it's not that big a deal. It's not a crazy year to be at the top of the draft anyway, but they have passed Seattle and are maybe going to pass Boston and Philly. The idea that they're going to drop to 30th below Nashville, that has probably a ship has sailed. So right now you pick 5th if everything held true in the lottery. They'd be picking between 4th and 6th most likely. So we'll see where that ends up. Now, I got Money Puck open, and I'm looking at the playoffs, and actually I am seeing the Sabres now at 0%. Not even a 0.1. So to my knowledge, they are not mathematically dead. But there's enough teams that are playing each other that maybe they kind of are mathematically dead. 9 points back. If you went 12-0, 11-0 down the stretch, that would be 22 points, right? Not 9 games left, excuse me. So that would be 18 points. That would get the Buffalo Sabres to 86 points. Montreal's at 77. So you would need Montreal and then everybody else to not reach 86. And that's if the Sabres went undefeated. So they win 3 of their remaining 9 and you're dead. Or anybody wins, the Rangers win 3 of their remaining 9, Columbus or the Red Wings win 4 of their remaining 9. Basically, the Sabres need to win out, and every team ahead of them needs to go below 500. And you need no loser points to be given out. And that's why you look at Money Puck and there's 0.0% chance to make it, because their odds are into the 100th place. So no, they're not going to make it, but again, with our previous exercise, add 6 points in there. 74 points. Where would they be? Exactly where Detroit and the New York Islanders are, which would be 3 points back heading into the final weeks of the season. That's in it. That's in it. If Luukkonen had just been, you could play this game with a lot of guys. This is not just on Luukkonen. You could play this game with the power play. You could play this game with Dahlin getting injured, the 13-game losing streak, third period leads. You could play your what-if game, whatever you want. But since we talked about Luukkonen today, just for the sake of it, the what-if game of if Luukkonen had just been a league average goalie on the year, Sabres might be 3 points back heading into the final month of the season, very much alive. So that's where you're at. So at the moment, the Sabres are 28th, but they could still realistically climb a couple of more spots, really to 24th. 4 points back of 24th, which is Anaheim, is squarely in the window for the final stretch of the season. All right, Sabres play the Senators tomorrow. That's what's first up. Ottawa, by the way, a couple of losses recently. They're still doing fine for playoff berth, but they don't have it clinched yet, obviously. Then the Sabres have a 3-game home trip with Tampa, Boston, and Carolina after that. The other thing that happened this weekend to quickly mention, Alex Ovechkin scoring again. This time it was perfect, right? Sabres already kind of had the result in the bag. Ovechkin standing in front with a nice deflection. He scores against the Sabres. So now he is 5 goals away from the all-time mark. And it's going to be really close to whether or not he breaks that record by the end of the season. That, though, is going to do it for us here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Although if you do want to check out more about Ovechkin's race, 5 goals to go, all the tributes that are happening to him, the stuff that you've seen. Actually, that wasn't to him, but he did a really cool thing, shaking Marc-Andre Fleury's hand over the weekend in his final meeting. So some cool stuff with Ovechkin right now. Locked On NHL's got you covered. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And we will talk to you tomorrow here on the Locked On Sabres podcast at Sneaky Joe Sports. You want to follow me on Twitter. Again, check out our text club, join subtext.com/Locked On Sabres. And we'll talk to you on game day here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.